The cause of death was listed as undetermined poisoning. The medical examiner disagreed, noting that the toxicology report revealed a cyanide positive detection in the deceased's blood and tissues. This finding suggested acute exposure to hydrogen cyanide, likely through ingestion or inhalation. Further analysis indicated the presence of trace amounts of bitter almonds, which are often associated with cyanide due to their similar chemical structure. The evidence was consistent with intentional poisoning via ingestion of a cyanide compound. It was also consistent with accidental exposure to a volatile cyanide-containing substance in an enclosed environment. Both scenarios required extensive investigation into the deceased's last known activities and potential access to cyanide sources. Chapter: Case background. The case under review involves an incident that occurred on November 15th at a downtown corporate office building in New York City, where the body of the deceased was discovered by a colleague approximately 1 hour after the reported time of departure for lunch. It was also consistent with accidental exposure to a volatile cyanide-containing substance in an enclosed environment. Both scenarios required extensive investigation into the deceased's last known activities and potential access to cyanide sources. The initial report indicated that colleagues noticed abnormal behavior from the deceased earlier in the day, including slurred speech and rapid breathing, which were not typical characteristics. Upon returning to their desk post-lunch break, they found the individual unresponsive with signs of distress such as cyanosis around the lips and fingertips. Paramedics were immediately summoned. However, despite emergency medical efforts, the deceased was pronounced dead at the scene shortly after arrival. The cause of death was initially presumed cardiac arrest due to natural causes, until toxicology results later confirmed a positive detection for cyanide in blood samples obtained during autopsy procedures conducted by the medical examiner's office on November 16th. Paramedics were immediately summoned. However, despite emergency medical efforts, the deceased was pronounced dead at the scene shortly after arrival. Chapter: Initial findings upon arrival at the residence. First responders noted a strong odor of bitter almonds emanating from the vicinity of the deceased, indicative of cyanide exposure based on its characteristic scent. The scene was characterized by an unsecured bottle of liquid containing traces of potassium cyanide located near the body, suggesting potential ingestion as the mode of entry for this highly toxic compound. The deceased was found in a supine position with no visible external injuries or signs of trauma consistent with physical altercation. Initial medical assessment revealed pinpoint pupils, indicative of acute respiratory distress and metabolic acidosis, hallmark symptoms of cyanide poisoning. Respiratory effort was significantly diminished, and there were no spontaneous movements observed upon initial approach. Given the absence of defensive wounds and the presence of potential poison at the scene, coupled with clinical signs suggestive of rapid onset asphyxia due to systemic hypoxia, death was initially classified as undetermined pending toxicology, results confirming cyanide poisoning. Respiratory effort was significantly diminished, and there were no spontaneous movements observed upon initial approach. This finding necessitated further forensic examination to rule out other causative factors or additional toxins. Chapter: Forensic investigation. Upon arrival at the scene, investigators meticulously documented a variety of physical evidence potentially linked to cyanide poisoning. Notable items included a partially consumed bottle of bitter almond-flavored syrup with visible residue and signs of recent tampering. Additionally, an empty glass on a side table exhibited chemical residues consistent with cyanide compounds upon spectroscopic analysis. The deceased's personal effects were collected under controlled conditions, ensuring the integrity of potential trace evidence such as hair samples and fingernail clippings for toxicological screening. A sealed container was utilized to secure all items, which were then cataloged and transferred to the forensic laboratory via a documented chain of custody protocol to prevent contamination or tampering. The absence of an alarm system activation raised questions regarding possible forced entry or insider involvement in the administration of the poison. The toxicological analysis commenced with the administration of a comprehensive battery of tests designed to detect and quantify various poisons within the deceased's bodily tissues. A specific focus was placed on cyanide, necessitating the use of high-performance liquid chromatography, HPLC, coupled with ultraviolet detection for its identification. The sample matrices included blood, urine, gastric contents, and liver tissue. Analysis revealed a cyanide concentration in whole blood exceeding 0.5 mg/L, surpassing the threshold indicative of lethal exposure. Histological examination of the liver tissue exhibited cytoplasmic vacuolization, consistent with acute metabolic stress. Microscopic analysis confirmed the presence of intracellular edema within hepatocytes, further supporting the toxicological findings. These results unequivocally indicated cyanide poisoning as the cause of death. The toxicology report identified cyanide as the causative agent in the deceased's death. Analysis of gastric contents indicated a rapid absorption profile, consistent with ingestion rather than inhalation exposure. The presence of cyanide ions was confirmed through spectroscopic analysis of tissue samples collected from the heart and liver, organs known to absorb toxins quickly post-ingestion. To establish the sequence of events leading to the fatal poisoning, forensic evidence including video surveillance footage, witness statements, and chemical residue testing were utilized. Surveillance cameras captured the deceased entering a building shortly before their last known communication at 21:45 hours on the day of death. This timeframe corroborates with the postmortem interval estimation of approximately 3 to 4 hours, based on body temperature decline and rigor mortis onset observed during autopsy. The timeline confirmed that cyanide ingestion occurred within this window, as delayed symptoms would not align with acute poisoning indicators present in toxicological findings. Thus, the evidence contradicts any hypothesis suggesting prolonged exposure or secondary contamination scenarios. The presence of cyanide detected through toxicological analysis indicates a fatal intoxication event. This finding substantiates the hypothesis of poisoning as the cause of death. Expert testimony would affirm the identification and quantification of cyanide in biological samples, including blood, liver tissue, and urine, with levels exceeding lethal thresholds. The expert would detail the methodological rigor employed to ensure accuracy and reliability, such as gas chromatography mass spectrometry analysis. Conclusive evidence includes the positive detection of cyanide, along with its absence from environmental controls. Interpretive aspects involve assessing potential exposure routes and timing relative to death. Under oath, the expert would articulate findings linking toxicological results directly to fatal cyanide poisoning, corroborating the forensic narrative without speculation beyond the evidence provided. Chapter Resolution. The toxicology report confirms a positive detection of cyanide in the deceased's bloodstream, establishing definitive proof of poisoning by this potent substance. Initially, based on external signs and preliminary tests, there was speculation regarding asphyxiation or other forms of chemical exposure. However, advanced analytical techniques such as gas chromatography mass spectrometry provided conclusive evidence of cyanide presence, shifting the focus from suffocation to specific toxicological causes. The central finding of cyanide poisoning was established through meticulous examination of the deceased's tissues and fluids for characteristic markers associated with this lethal agent. Cyanide binds rapidly and irreversibly to cytochrome C oxidase within mitochondria, disrupting oxygen utilization at the cellular level. This biochemical process was corroborated by microscopic analysis, revealing necrosis in vital organs susceptible to hypoxia. From the initial assessment of possible asphyxiation due to lack of oxygen indicators, the investigation pivoted towards identifying cyanide's unique toxicological profile. The resolution of this case underscores the importance of comprehensive toxicology screening in forensic pathology to accurately determine causation and rule out alternative hypotheses. This case underscores the critical role of comprehensive toxicological screening in determining causative agents in unexplained fatalities. Cyanide's presence, detected through meticulous chemical analysis and corroborated by tissue samples, exemplifies the necessity for precise laboratory protocols to establish definitive cause of death. The file remains open,